Demonio Dinaja Abarera Legos Ram Ori Banish C10 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 Demonio Dinaja Abarera Legos Ram Abarera Nikos Ram Ori Banish C10 Demonio Dinaja 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 Abarera Nikos Ram Ori Banish C10 Demonio Dinaja.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Satan and Coffee. I'm Adia's Dade, and as always, we begin. Hail Satan, hail Lilith, hail Lucifer, hail Pyman, hail Baphomet, hail thyself. We reject the Trinity, we reject the baptism of John, we reject the baptism of the Spirit. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Sunday thus far. I do apologize for the late start here. I'm still dealing with some pain here in my jaw area with my teeth after the surgery. So I've just been waiting for the ibuprofen to kick in. It's beginning to null the pain. It's not completely gone as of yet, but I didn't want to start any later than what it already is. So let us begin reading, shall we? The Teutonic goddess of the dead, the daughter of Loki, was named Hel, a pagan god of torture and punishment. Another L was added when the books of the Old Testament were formulated. The prophets who wrote the Bible did not know the word hell, Hell. They used the Hebrew Sheol and the Greek Hades, which meant the grave, also the Greek Tartarus, which was the abode of fallen angels, the underworld, inside the earth. The Gehenna, which was a valley near Jerusalem, where Moloch reigned and garbage was dumped and burned. It is from this that the Christian church evolved the idea of fire and brimstone in hell. The Protestant hell and the Catholic hell are places of eternal punishment. However, the Catholics also believe there is a purgatory where all souls go for a time, and a limbo where unbaptized souls go. The Buddhist hell is divided into 8 sections, the first 7 of which can be expiated. The description of hell is that of a horrible place of fire and torment in Dante's Inferno, and in northern climes it was thought to be an icy cold region, a giant refrigerator. Even with all their threats of eternal damnation and soul roasting, Christian missionaries have run across some who were not so quick to swallow their drivel. Pleasure and pain, like beauty, are in the eye of the beholder. So when missionaries ventured to Alaska and warned the Eskimos of the horrors of hell and the blazing lake of fire awaiting transgressors, they eagerly asked, "How do we get there?" Most Satanists do not accept Satan as an anthropomorphic being with cloven hooves, a barbed tail, and horns. He merely represents a force of nature, the powers of darkness, which have been named just that because no religion has taken these forces out of the darkness. Nor has science been able to apply technical terminology to this force. It is an untapped reservoir that few can make use of because they lack the ability to use a tool without having to first break down the label and label all the parts which make it run. It is this incessant need to analyze which prohibits most people from taking advantage of this many-faceted key to the unknown, which the Satanist chooses to call Satan. Satan as a god, demigod, personal savior, or whatever you wish to call him, was invented by the formulators of every religion on the face of the earth for only one purpose: to preside over man's so-called wicked activities in situations here on earth. Consequently, anything resulting in physical or mental gratification was defined as evil, thus assuring a lifetime of unwarranted guilt for everyone. So if evil, they have named us, evil we are. And so what? The satanic age is upon us. Why not take advantage of it and live? Yeah, it's irritating. It's, you know, my mouth was hurting and it was hard to eat because of the tooth pushing on all my other teeth. And now that that tooth is gone, there's some nerve damage and there's just constant aching pain going through everything. So the end of this section here, the next section we'll be getting into is love and hate. This section here is an important section because it does talk about something that I've been kind of preaching for a very long time. The idea that giving into the animalistic nature of being a human being, anything that fosters some level of personal gratification. It's Satan testing your will with the pain, right? Yeah. That seems like more of God's thing. I'm going to make you suffer and see if you still believe. So wait, what? Everything that is done for or through gratification, personal enjoyment, things of that nature, is labeled a sin. Anything, especially if we're talking kind of like, you know, sexuality or anything of that nature, right? Enjoying food or things like that, is designed to bring about a sensation of guilt, right? That we need to feel guilty for enjoying our lives, for enjoying ourselves, for being who we are, right? And constantly under the threat of eternal damnation. It is the epitome of living through fear. You fear Satan and you must fear God. And this is the primary reason when I was younger why I made the decision to step away from these monotheistic Abrahamic faiths completely and wholeheartedly, is this idea that I must fear everything. I must fear being happy for not to be too happy. I must fear being sad because it would be too depressed, or being too angry because then that's wrath. Being hungry because then that's gluttony, and it just keeps going and going and going. Right? That you must fear every aspect of your life. You must live in fear. And that is no way to live. The people that constructed and built these religions understood that the easiest way to control people was to have them live in fear. And we can see that in modern day politics, right? And make no mistake, this is a political game, right? And with the guise of religion, okay? Politics have followed this line of make the populace afraid to control them, and it has worked. It has worked. You know, the most recent thing about that, I think is COVID. I'm not one of those people that believed that COVID was a farce and COVID wasn't real. I wholeheartedly believe that it was real. I wholeheartedly believe that, you know, there are many people dying of it. But I do believe that, like many things in the media, it was ramped up for fear, right? For fear mongering. And the reason I say this is if we look back at the media and we look back at the history of the United States, we can constantly see these things repeated. World War II, the Cold War, right? The Cuba Missile Crisis, right? You know, we wholeheartedly believed as Americans during that time period that some nuclear missile was going to come from Cuba and kill us all. You know, and after 9/11, right? To, edge everybody into going to war when we didn't have to, right? Constantly, talking about terrorism and terrorists and this, that, and, Al Qaeda and all of these things, people were afraid, right? Something had happened on our shores, right? A couple of planes flew into a couple of buildings, killing 3,000 people. And so, make no mistake about it, constructing ideas of fear for people to live in are specifically designed for control. It's not to say that COVID wasn't a threat. It's not to say that Al Qaeda wasn't a threat. It's not to say that there wasn't a possibility that maybe Russia had missiles in Cuba and wanted, or were thinking about putting missiles on Cuba and wanted to attack us. It's not to say that these things didn't exist or didn't happen or didn't have the possibility of happening. It is to say that these situations have been overly magnified, blown up, out of proportion, and shot into people's faces with no context whatsoever, simply for the sake of creating fear. And Christianity, or most Abrahamic faiths, do this consistently and constantly, and have done for thousands of years. It is no wonder that modern-day politicians have taken a cue from these good old-time religions. Scare the populace into control. Catholicism is one of the longest-running primary religions in the world. And it is because of the constant fear of hell and the need to be in the good graces of God and Jesus that push these people every single day down the path that they're going. Our existence as human beings has been designed by fear. I mean, churches back in the day, when science was beginning to ramp up and we were beginning to explain the natural aspects of the world, where volcanoes come from, earthquakes, tsunamis, gravity, for fuck's sake. The church, when these concepts were first presented to them, because everything had to go through the church back then, the church was the political body if you wanted your scientific theory to be approved. Arrested, tortured, and killed these people for presenting scientific findings that contradicted the things that they were saying, that assisted them in showing the wrath of God and why you should be afraid of God's wrath and why you should fear Satan. These things are always used in such a way that forced people to be afraid that if there's a volcano exploded near where you live, or your village must have pissed off God, right? He wanted to wipe you out like the flood. If there was an earthquake, you guys must have done something. If there was a tsunami, you guys must have done something, right? God created a mini flood to wipe you guys out, right? And then they would use these events to say that, well, these people God deemed unworthy and wipe them off the map. Fear the wrath of God. Give your life to God. Give your life to Jesus. Fear his wrath. These are the things that he does. It was science. It's just nature. But we very quickly began to label these events as retribution for living a godless life. And people fell in line with this idea. And then when people learned that, hey, it's not God, it's just the way the earth is designed. This is why a volcano happens. This is why a tsunami happens. These people were very quickly eliminated and silenced because it would make everything that the church said previously irrelevant and untrue and ignorant. The concept of gravity, or rather the earth being round. This is another one. The first person to go to the church and say, hey, the earth's not flat, it's round, it's a globe. He was put in prison and killed. It wasn't until about 500-600 years later that the next person to come forth and say that, they're like, okay. Right? They kind of went along with it. Because I guess they figured out a way to make it work. So the church it's not only a metaphorical fear that you need to live in, that they want you to live in. Not just a hypothetical fear of what might happen after you die, but of how you live each and every day. And to live in fear, they have you under their thumb all the time. Because you're so worried about how you live your life now that you are willing to live your life, sacrifice your gratification, sacrifice your pleasure, sacrifice your success in life for this idea that the church spoon-fed you, that if you do these things, you give all your money to the church, you live a humble life, yada, yada, yada. You don't ask any questions, you don't cause a ruckus, none of these things. Then you get to go to heaven. You get to be with your loved ones, the ones that you missed, the ones that died, and then everyone that you leave behind will eventually come and see you there if they follow in your footsteps. To limit your life based on the possibility of what's going to happen after, this life as who you are today is the only one you have. Now, I do believe in reincarnation, but I believe in reincarnation in a different way, and we've talked about this before. The reincarnation of the battery, of the power, of the perpetual movement, right, of soul energy. It returns to its source and then comes back to power another living being. This does not mean that you, as who you are today, is going to come back. You're not going to die and then at some point open your eyes again. And as human beings, it seems that this is something that we fish after so heartfeltly, right? We fish after this idea of wanting eternal life, of being alive forever, right? We constantly fish after this concept, and I believe that is part of the reason why we're so limited. Because this concept of eternal life, this concept of reincarnation, this concept of going to heaven, it makes us lazy. It makes us lazy. I have explained those, DA. So like with anything that is connected to you, there are certain things that are imprinted that can be recalled. The fact that the soul energy is connected to the source constantly, that universal energy, it's constantly connected to that. When powering you and when returning to it, it is constantly in perpetuity connected to that universal energy. And so these visions, these past life visions, I have no doubt that people have past life visions. I have absolutely no doubt. But one, you have no guarantee that it is your vision, that you lived it, for however much it may feel like it was you, because you're seeing through those eyes for that moment. You as who you are today only exists in the now. And I believe that this idea of fishing for a eternal redo process makes us lazy. We have a hard time accepting that life is finite. It begins and it ends as it should. Life should not be eternal. What makes life special is the fact that this is your only shot at it. I have no doubt that your soul is going to come back and it's going to power another life form. It's going to power another human being. It's going to make those electrical signals in the brain pop off and snap off and begin somebody else's life, and that you are connected. You, as who you are today, is connected to that new life. To learn again, to grow again. The soul begins to advance, begins to move, begins to learn more. Well, I believe that I think one of the things that a lot of people miss is inheritance. Your children. Your immortality exists through your children. The information that you pass on to the younger generation. How much are they going to learn from you and then be able to continue that lesson and learn more? Right? If we look at how paganism and how witchcraft functioned in the old world, it was very clan-based. It was very tribe-based, right? Certain practices and certain tribes, certain information passed down through generations and generations of that tribe, of that locale. And then slowly it begins to kind of creep out, and others begin to learn different forms of how things are done and be able to adopt those practices and those ways of doing things. Much of the craft's past was built and constructed not in literature, but rather word of mouth, through the connection of tribes, tribal leaders, shamans, spiritual leaders of the time. And that information was constantly, shared and brought forth. So this concept, the concept of reincarnation in life being a lesson and a repetitive lesson, is taken directly from the idea of your children. When you have children and grandchildren, your wisdom and your knowledge is passed down to them through your interaction with them. Who they are as people is partly your responsibility. Partly. Because obviously society has changed from the old ways. There's a lot of information out there and not a lot of it that you control. But the lessons that we learn are lessons that we can teach to the next generation and continue the knowledge and growth. We can continue it that way. I would love nothing more than to believe that when I die, I'm just going to come back. But the more I look into it, the more I dig into it, the less likely it seems. Because I do believe that science and spirituality should go hand in hand. I do believe that both of these things teach us valuable lessons about how we function as human beings. And one science that cannot be ignored is psychology. Though still technically in its infancy, rather being maybe an adolescent science, science nonetheless. And understanding the psychology of how we are developed as human beings and how we become who we are the most logical explanation that exists inside of all of this. Because for all the science we have, we still cannot pinpoint exactly how the body produces the amount of electricity that it does in order to do what it does. The most logical explanation for that is the soul, which would mean that the soul is a battery. It is not to say that the soul doesn't have its own consciousness to a degree, but that consciousness belongs to a whole, belongs to that universal whole energy. And so understanding that you as who you are is up here, comprised of both nature and nurture, how your life went, the things that happen in your life. That is what comprises and makes you you. The Christians would want you to believe that you are your soul. Your personality comes from your soul. I can't believe that. And I'll tell you why I can't believe that. The soul is perfect energy, is pure energy, is pure astral energy, is what the soul is. It is energy that we as human beings cannot fully comprehend, on a level that we fully cannot comprehend. And that being so, then when we look at situations where we have serial killers and serial rapists and child abductors and all of these horrible evils of humanity, would mean that this horrible evil exists inside of this universal energy. And the one thing that I believe wholeheartedly is that energy is pure. Energy is indifferent. Energy is pure in the sense that it is nor good nor evil, it just is. It cannot be killed, it cannot be created. It is, it always has been, and it always will be. And science itself teaches us this, that energy of any form cannot be destroyed, nor can it be created. It only changes form. That's it. Scientifically, this is what we understand. That being said, I cannot accept the idea that if you are your soul, that for some reason there exist souls that are just pure malevolence. And as someone that does not believe in a true all-powerful form of malevolence or evil, like the devil or Satan, as an archetype of evil and anti-godliness, it makes more sense to me that there is something chemically wrong in the construction of a person's brain that puts them in a situation where they completely lack empathy and find gratification in the suffering of others. One of the primary reasons most of us would find it difficult to harm another living creature in general is because of empathy. Empathy exists on a psychological level. We wish not to cause pain because we understand pain. Those that cause pain and experience gratification through the pain of others do not experience empathy, meaning that chemically their brain is not reacting the way that it should. Chemically, not electrically. Electrically speaking, their brains are firing off perfectly fine. Chemically, what is supposed to be created to induce a certain sensation is not being created. allowing them to be able to do the things that they do and experience gratification through that action. That is psychological, that is scientific, that is not spiritual. Went to a new bookstore I found yesterday. It's like a big one-of-a-kind Barnes & Noble. Nice. I miss Barnes & Noble. I miss my iced coffee Barnes & Noble sessions. Cool. I'm glad. Sad that they only had 2 copies of it, though. Speaking of iced coffee, not Satan and coffee without coffee. Satan's always there. So when it comes to the concept of resurrection, your soul does come back. Your soul will always come back. It's what it's designed to do. It has a design, and it's created to do a specific thing. And certain aspects of yourself will always be imprinted on the soul. And when that soul comes back to power another being, when I say another being, it's another human being. I'm not one of those people that believe that you can come back as a fucking fly. Sorry. It's like trying to put a double D battery in a slot for a AAA. You know what I mean? It doesn't work. And so those visions that people have, past life regression, I completely, wholeheartedly believe that people do see these things. No question in my mind. The question comes up is to what degree they are experiencing this. This is the point of argument right here. Is what this person's seeing truly something that they've lived in the past? And it is them that is back in this physical body, remembering what has happened to them in these past lives? Or is it the fact that all of these experiences are collectively gathered into this universal energy, and the soul energy, the soul force, has access to this huge memory bank that's flowing through this universal focal energy, and that at certain points, very vivid points, can be remembered and can be re-experienced, but as a whole. So not necessarily saying that this is your memory, that this happened to you, but somewhere down the line connected to this soul energy, you have these experiences. And I'll give you an example of why I believe that that's the reason why. Though I haven't heard this happen very often, I have heard enough cases of people experiencing past life regression and for some reason, for most people, it's always somebody famous, right? Everybody, for some reason, at some point has been Napoleon. Everyone has been Cleopatra. Everyone has been King Tut. Everyone... You see where I'm going with this, right? So those are the big ones, right? Everybody's talking about being this big, powerful thing, person, whatever from the past. 1. 2, what happens more often than not is when you get 2 or 3 different kind of flashbacks, the time frames overlap. Now, a lot can happen within, right, set time periods, but it almost seems like the time frames overlap, like 2 people existing simultaneously through one person. And the only way that I can logically explain that is that the universe has somewhat of a memory bank to it. And when we experience past life regression, the past life regression that we experience comes from that memory bank. Now, I believe wholeheartedly, here's a big thing, guys. I believe wholeheartedly with enough practice, we could learn to access that memory bank and learn from the past. right? Now, as human beings, we have this idea of constantly trying to connect to who or what we are, right? Trying to understand ourselves, right? I think when it comes to past life regression, I think one of the most important things to kind of look at for past life regression specifically is more closely related to the idea of understanding that we are all connected, that every living thing, every living creature on this planet is connected, has always been connected, and that we have a collective memory bank that we can draw from to help us understand and push through certain experiences that we're going through today, to help us understand how to jump past and skip repeating experiences that we've had in the past. And if we can understand that connection that we have to each other, that collective memory bank, put it this way, right? You ever sometimes go to the store and you look at somebody that you've never seen before in your entire life, and you look at them and you're like, I know them. I know them. How do I know them? Well, one, that does definitely have part to do with the past lives, right? The past life regression and knowing people in your past life, one. Though a smaller part of it, it is still a part of it. But two, it's also that connectedness, that oneness, that unifying factor that we have, right? Is that we are all connected to the universe. Our energy is intertwined through every living thing that exists in the universe. Not just this planet, the entire universe. So it would make sense that someone that is at a similar emotional peak that you are at, or a similar emotional or psychological situation where you are currently, or where you have recently been, or maybe even where you are probably going to be going, when you look at that person, you're like, oh, why do they look so familiar? Like, I know them. Where do I know them from? That's why. Because you're so close on that spiritual, psychological plane of where you have been or where you might be going to very soon. Their image becomes known to you because it's something that you can learn from or teach. Now, there's always the possibility you went to high school with the motherfucker and you just don't remember their face. That's a thing. Right? Like, let's, strip away the mysticism. Maybe the dude sat behind you in grade school, picking his nose and eating his boogers, and that's how you know him. Possibly. Right? So there's 1,000,001 different possibilities of the direction these things can go. And the important aspect for us individually is to be open for all possibilities. It's this whole concept of what I talk about before, like when you look for signs, right? Signs happen. Signs in the universe exist, right? The universe is constantly trying to tell you shit. Just most of us are too dumb to notice. But the problem is when you start looking for signs, then everything becomes a sign. Right? I mean, there's this movie with Jim Carrey. What was it, like 232 or 23? I think it was 23 was the number, right? And he started seeing, like, he thought that 23 actually meant something, and he started seeing it everywhere, right? In everything that he was doing. Right? That's what that movie is a comment on. Not that like 23 is some type of mystical fucking number. It's because the brain can very quickly become obsessed with something and then very quickly begin to notice it everywhere. Right? Which is one of the reasons, like, when we're younger, when we were teenagers or like in our 20s and we first got into the occult, everything was fucking magical. Right? Because our brains are firing on all fucking cylinders with this shit, guys. We're like, oh my God, magic is real, and spells and rituals and spirits and all these. So everything became spiritual. Everything became a fucking sign. We saw it everywhere. It's in everything. One of the reasons why so many people get into the occult at a young age and then leave when they get older is because that chemical sensation of everything being new and amazing, it dies down. Our brains as older adults don't really kind of operate the same way that it did when we were like 18, 20, right? Not everything's so woo anymore. It's like with anything. It's like falling in love. The first 2 years that you say that you love somebody, you don't actually love them. It's a chemical reaction in your brain. Tell me, like, after 15 years of living and sleeping with that same person, tell me 15 years later that you still love them, and I will completely believe you. Within the first 12 months that you're with somebody, that you tell me that, oh, they're the one, I love them. Give it time. Give it time. The occult is like love. Love is not an emotion. It is a choice. It is a choice that you make every single day to be where you are, with whom you are. It is not a magical decision. It's not something you just know. It's a choice that you make every single day. It's a choice that I've made for the last 20 years, 20 plus years, to be involved in this. Have I hit situations where I've had my doubts? Of course. Of course I've had my doubts. One of the things that I find to be a benefit to me as an occultist is I'm a skeptic, right? I am not somebody that's going to jump on the mass hysteria bandwagon and think that the world is coming to end, or that when somebody tells me, yes, I did this ritual, and Belial's hand came through and grabbed me by my throat and pulled me into the spirit realm. Like, somebody tells me something like that, and I kind of look at them to make sure that if they actually believe the words that are coming out of their mouth, and if it looks like they actually believe the words that are coming out of their mouth, the first thing I'm going to tell them, you need to seek professional assistance. That's just how I work. The conversations that I've had with Baphomet are nothing like what some people would say. Like some people would say they spoke with Jesus. Like, yes, I sat down on the stone and Jesus was there and I talked to Jesus. Just like I'm talking to you right now, I had this conversation with Jesus. No. Those people need help too. Now, if you're seeing Jesus or the Virgin Mary in a tortilla, I mean, I guess I can see, like, the eyes plays tricks on people, right? So that makes sense. But I think one of the benefits to how I believe is the fact that I'm a skeptic. Because I analyze everything. And then when I'm certain that there isn't, I'm not one of those skeptics that say there has to be a logical explanation. Because then that's also limiting to being open to the possibility of more existing, right? Like, you can't be that closed off that forcibly, absolutely everything without question has a logical explanation, because not everything does. And when we reach that point of not having a logical explanation, well, the Bible just doesn't answer it, right? And not to mention the amount of contradiction, fear, guilt, and just horridness that exists in the Bible. And you're talking to somebody, I've read the Quran, I've read the Torah, I've read the Old Testament, the New Testament, Kabbalah, I've read all of these books. Multiple times. Not once, not twice, like 3 or 4 times each. And what makes the most sense to me is paganism, and specifically the left-hand path. Satanism, from a philosophical standpoint, this book right here is going to be the most important read of your life. Without question. The Satanic Bible is going to be the most important read of your life from a philosophical standpoint. Because it's going to open up an entire world for you of understanding how human nature functions inside of spirituality and how those two things are connected and should be connected. That you should not ignore the nature of being human, in the pursuit of your spiritual absoluteness, right? Your spiritual absolution. Let me get to these comments here real quick. Sorry, guys. I mean, I can understand that, Lady Tessa, but I mean, for me, the idea with the soul is that the most logical explanation of why the body produces the electrical signals that it does at the level that it does, because science doesn't have an answer for it. It has hypothesis, but it doesn't have a working theory yet, is the soul energy. Just that when we begin. Yes, it is learning to be passively open to signs without obsessing over them. Yes. Otherwise, you're going to start writing the number 23 all over your face. Warning before this that states doing this will have a likely chance of causing Michael is a friend. I think he's a brilliant man. I'm going to assume that it's probably one of his older books. Yeah. I mean, Michael actually had offered to write the intro to the book that I'm writing. The Book of Baphomet, Conversations with the Horned One. Michael had actually offered to write the introduction to it, and I foolishly declined, because I didn't want people to want to buy the book because it's connected to Michael Ford, right? I wanted it to be built off of its own merits. I might have to reach out to him and ask if he's still willing to do the introduction. But we'll see what happens. So, yeah, I think that the thing with reincarnation. Oh, it's in his newer Hecate one. Okay, interesting. I'll have to ask him. I'm pretty sure I still have his number. Can't show you guys his number. That would be horrible, but can't do that. But yeah, I got his number in there. You can see it's right. His number's right. I don't know if it's gonna focus or not. There it is, right there. There's his number. It just showed the contact name, so. I'll have to reach out and ask. But, I mean, as far as Paperclip, as far as like kind of like my understanding of like reincarnation and my thoughts on it, it's the only thing that encompasses everything. So one of the things that I look for when I do spiritual deconstruction, and that's what I call it spiritual deconstruction. It is taking what cannot be explained and how many different faiths and beliefs in the world look at this particular aspect of things, and then looking at what's left out, right? Because one of the things that you'll notice when you begin to look as a theologian at the different perspectives of different theology throughout the world is that certain aspects or something are very well explained, but then it leaves the question of what about this? And then as you begin to research further into the other branches of theology, you begin to see that those questions are answered in other faiths, but again opens up a question that was answered in another one, or even arises another question of something that's left out. And so as you begin to kind of go through and you begin to look at all of these different concepts and ideas, you begin to piece together a deeper understanding of how things function around you, right? And you learn very quickly, especially in the occult, because the occult is the pursuit of gnosis. It's the pursuit of knowledge. Can we manipulate the world around us? Yes. Can we make things happen for us? Yes. Do many of us have wonderful results in asking for material and mundane things? Yes, of course. Because where we're talking about manipulation of the energy at the same plane of where we exist. Though that is not the sole focus of the occult, right? Unfortunately, in modern day, spirituality and like New Age, faith and things like that, when we look at Wicca or Gerald Gardner and things like that, it's specifically based, they specifically build it around the ability to manipulate the world around you. We know that we can do that. That's not a new concept. We are well aware that we're capable of manipulating the world around us spiritually and through ritual practice. The biggest aspect of the occult that many people sadly are ignoring today is the fact that the occult, hidden knowledge, is the pursuit of gnosis. It's the pursuit of wisdom. It's the pursuit of intellectual growth. And through that intellectual growth, the spiritual growth in turn. And I believe that our obsessive focus on manipulation of earthly energy has diverted our attention to the actual ability to understand things on a significantly deeper level, and then bring things to a level of even greater understanding by passing that knowledge on to, other people, to be able to research, reference, and then grow from that itself. It's one of the things that through the conversations that I've had with Baphomet, I learned is that, yes, the obsession with mundane or lower magic is a distraction and should not be the whole of the law. So in that sense, I do completely disagree with Aleister Crowley's concept, let thy will be the whole of the law. That's not how it should work. In the occult, our primary focus should be understanding to a further degree the spiritual happenings of this and the world beyond this. And it's not to say that one shouldn't partake in lower magic and the manipulation of mundane energies for personal gain and success. It's not to say that one shouldn't do that. I mean, most certainly one should be able to do that. It is an aspect of learning, right? To be able to do that. So I definitely think that one should be able to do that. But I don't think that should be the only thing that people do. That I think that people shouldn't only be sitting in front of their altar because they want to raise at work or want to buy a new car. Right? I personally believe that everyone should be in ritual, true high magic ritual, ceremonial ritual, at least twice a week. At least, at the very least, I think everyone should partake in a ceremonial ritual at least twice a week. Exactly, Lady Tessa, exactly. But I do fully believe that we as occultists should be in deep ritual and meditation at least twice a week. At the very least, ideally 3 times. It's like going to the gym. Anyway, everyone, I do appreciate your patience. I appreciate you all coming at the later hour. Thank you very much. That is going to conclude today's sermon. Right? Today's mass, so to speak. Okay, I thank you all. Also, another thing, so I wanted to bring up a couple of things here at the end. One, threadsforthedead.com, if you're looking for a t-shirt or something of that nature. I've got just made a new digital vampire shirt, if you guys are in anime at all. I drew a anime vampire, kind of like in a dark cyberpunk kind of look. It says vampire without any vowels. There's some binary code in the back that says digital vampire, and then over top of vampire it says digital vampire in Japanese. I really like the design. If you guys are interested in that, buying merch, gives you guys something for your money and helps keep supporting, the mission here. So there's that. Witch Skills is going to be popping up. We're going to be doing a soft launch of Witch Skills for a few people to test it out, to test out the courses and stuff like that. Coming August. Okay. It's too hot, man. It's too hot. Like, I don't live in Scandinavia. Yeah, there's that. So thank you guys very much for being here. And as always, hail thy fucking self. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace the fuck out.